Welcome to the show that has it all. This is the Betfred Super League.
What a game!
Champions, challengers, newcomers, leagues faithful. Hold on tight. This is the Betfred Super League 2024. There's nothing like league.
Yeah. No! Got me here. It took a big chunk out of me. Bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped me ear off. What do you think?
Hello there and welcome along to this week's edition of Eddie and Stevo, the podcast. And for me personally, what a momentous week this has been. There's another member of the Hemmings clan on this planet, the guy who so efficiently records, edits and distributes our podcast. My son Mark and his lovely wife Michelle have announced the birth of a little baby girl, Lucy Grace, who was born on the 20th of May at 8 pounds 6 ounces. She's our fifth grandchild, and she's a little belter. So, Stevo, happy times for Carol and me here.
It's marvellous for Mark. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And how'd you say? That's more money you'll have to spend at Christmas now, Eddie.
I know. It's frightening, isn't it? It really is. It's absolutely frightening. He also works at the Etihad Stadium for Manchester City, of course, and they claimed their fourth Premier League title in a row on Sunday. So he's had the best of weeks, hasn't he? He really has.
Has he ever? You know, lovely to bring into the world, and it won't be long before she realises that rugby league is the greatest game of all.
Absolutely, yes. Spot on, Stevo. OK, right to the rugby league and the chat that comes every week with the support of Betfred. Challenge Cup semi-finals to look back on shortly. But first of all, news of a major announcement from Hull that their new coach has been named from next season. John Cartwright, a legendary former player, currently assistant coach at Brisbane Broncos in Australia, and he will join the Black and Whites at the start of next season. Now, Steve-O, nobody knows the Aussie scene better than you. On the face of it, this is great news for fans of Hull, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Fantastic news. A lot of people don't realise that John Cartwright has got a really good pedigree when it comes to being a coach. He was a head coach at Gold Coast around about 8 seasons. He's had work at the Roosters, North Queensland, Manly, and as I say, the North Queensland Cowboys. He was a high-performance coach assisting Michael Maguire at the State of Origin for New South Wales. The one thing about it, he's got plenty of experience. Of course, he had a brief spell at Salford in the late 1990s, 1997, I think it was. So if you want experience, he's got it. But the one thing that Hull will get from this guy, he loves training. He loves to see them fitness. He will just put them through the ringer, and you will see a different fit side when he comes over for the season 2025.
Well, he's promised the fans a fit and hungry side. And he did say when a club of the size and status of Hull FC come along, it's something he really wants to have a go at. He's excited at the prospects.
Yeah, and so he should be as well, because he's one of those coaches that when you look at all the ones that he's actually worked alongside, and let's not forget, you know, he was the head coach at Gold Coast in their first 8 seasons, and they did exceptionally well. And I think it's a golden opportunity for him. And I think it's been a wise move by the Black and Whites. They can look forward to one thing, fitness. He will just give them as much energy into coaching.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed for him. I wonder if you'll have a similar impact, Steve, as Sam Burgess has had at Warrington. We know they and Wigan will compete in the Challenge Cup final at Wembley next month after the semi-finals. And you predicted 2 Ws would make it to the third W, Wembley. So you were spot on this time.
Yeah, I don't think that was difficult, Eddie. I think that Warrington, as we've mentioned many weeks before, is that they've had a clear out. And there's a lot of youth there. There's a lot of experience still there, and a good balance. And when you get youth and experience, and they're eager, and you can see that they're not only playing for the crowd, they're playing for their coach, but most importantly, they're playing as a team for themselves. This will be a classic at Wembley.
Fingers crossed, and, Warrington were breathtaking again in the opening quarter of an hour or so. Then they had some good defence as Huddersfield tried to recover. But in the second half, they cut loose again. I mean, they look on course for something. They really do. And what a fillet for Burgess to get him to Wembley in his first 13 games.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
We've talked briefly about Warrington, Huddersfield. Well, they were disappointing, but my word, Hull Kingston Rovers, they didn't turn up, did they? They reserved their worst performance of the season for this one.
Do you know, my mind goes back to when I was playing at my hometown club, Dewsbury. And it was also a semi-final to get to Wembley. And we played Bradford. It was Bradford Northern those days. And we were so odds-on favourites to win that game, Eddie, and we didn't turn up. And quite frankly, the Rovers did exactly the same thing. They just didn't turn up. They just didn't get there. I mean, they played some fantastic rugby league this season, and yet it all fell away. But you can't take anything away because of the balance of youth and experience that they've got at Warrington. And it's the same at Wigan. It's going to be a fantastic final. Let's hope we can fill Wembley. It's been a long time since we can do that. But when you're going to see 2 of the best teams in rugby league in this country, then, let's put your hand in your pocket and buy a ticket, because it's going to be a classy Wembley final.
Do you think this final's too close to call, though, Stevo? The 2 sides meet at Warrington the week before. I wonder what's going to happen there. It's going to be a game of ducks and drakes, that one, isn't it, in the Super League? It'll be a week before Wembley.
It's going to be interesting to see, and it's happened so many times before, where one side decides it's a good build-up to it, and the other team perhaps will say, well, I'll rest 2 or 3 of my best players. It's going to be interesting to see how Wigan and Warrington look upon that game the week before the big one at Wembley. It'll be interesting to see what they will do. Will they rest or will they play a full team? I hope both sides play a full team.
Yeah, don't disrespect the Super League and let Wembley take care of itself. Well, don't forget the women's final. That's on the same day as the Challenge Cup final. Leeds and St Helens will compete the final. Saints, the holders, beat York Valkyrie 32-2, and Leeds beat Wigan 34-20 at the weekend. And the 1895 Cup final as well takes place. So 3 games for the price of 1 at Wembley. Contrast that, Stevo, with the Magic Round in the NRL in Brisbane this last weekend. 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just short of 60,000 on Friday. Almost the same on Saturday, 47,500 on Sunday. Aggregate attendance, 149,196. Just have a think about those figures. We seem to be light years behind them, Stevo.
Well, we are. It isn't as though I think. It's a proven point that they are advancing, both in player stature and also attendances. And they made it very, very special by announcing that it won't be just going up to Brisbane for that year. I think they've got a 3-year contract, which is great. But what I fear more than anything is that because the New South Wales versus Queensland game, the state of origin, has become so fierce and so exciting that it will overcome the interest of international games.
It has already, Stevo, in Australia. Let's be fair. It has already.
And that's what we've got to try to avoid. Now, there are still rumours going around in Australia and, of course, in the UK that the NRL are interested in a percentage within Super League.
Yes.
I hope that comes about.
Well, this rumoured investment by the NRL, it apparently was on the agenda at last Thursday's chief executives meeting ahead of the Magic Round in Brisbane, and it was reportedly discussed again. Now, the NRL are believed to want between a 20 and 50% ownership of the Super League. They would need convincing about not only profitability, which is a question mark, but also that the deal would have the ability to strengthen rugby league as a global sport. Now, Warrington and Wigan have also reportedly been expressing an interest in being involved in the Las Vegas plans for 2025. But the World Club Challenge, they're saying down there, apparently, will stay in England because of its significance to the English fans. Do you really think the NRL ownership or part ownership of our Super League is the way forward?
The combination, at least if the Australians and the New Zealanders get involved in backing our Super League, then it can only be good for the game. And not only that, we can start doing things like, if you have a 17, 18-year-old kid that's coming through in the lower grades in Australia, that you have what you call a family team in the UK. No money involved, no contract in regard to it. Obviously, you'll get paid and accommodation, etc., and so forth. But no other club can take away a player from that designated Sydney team or Australian team, and that will help bolster, and vice versa. I think it's a no-brainer, and we've got to look. As I keep saying it's not just about getting something sorted out financially, etc. It's about using the brains to make sure that our game doesn't disappear. Because on a few occasions, we've been very close to that.
Good thought. Let's see what happens. It's all on the agenda for the future. Right, back to the playing matters. And, of course, players are on the move all the time. Tommy, at this time of year anyway, Tommy Makinson is going to leave St Helens at the end of the year, apparently. Likely destination, the Catalan Dragons, an obvious replacement for Tom Johnston, who is going back to Wakefield. But Wakefield guaranteed a place in Super League next year? I'm not so sure that they are, Steve. They're already talking up big and spending big.
Well, they've got the guy with the money that wants to impress everything, and they're building. And I take my hat off to them. Yeah, okay, this is what we want. But will IMG allow them to come in? What is their position in the grading? We already talk about that London's gone because they just can't get anywhere near the amount of points that you need to stay in Super League next year. Now, if London goes, that means that we'll have an 11-team competition for next season. So that means we'll have to have a bye every now and again. So will they change their attitude and allow Wakefield, if they win the competition, then they've every right to say, well, we want to be promoted.
But are Wakefield ahead of Toulouse on the grading, Stevo? Because we were talking last week that Toulouse are probably coming in.
Well, that's all about IMG.
Talking of players on the move. Tom Amone from Lee. Apparently he's not staying at the Lee Leopards next year. He's heading back to the NRL. But there's news just coming in about John Bateman, because he's been named among a list of players that West Tigers are looking to offload to Super League as part of what they're calling a fire sale set to begin in the next week or so. John is reportedly one of several players that will be presented to clubs as a recruitment opportunity as the Australian club look to open up salary cap space. John Bateman, this is his second time in Australia and sounds like he's coming back again.
Well, it's all about money, Eddie, and we keep saying it. I've got no idea what sort of contract that Bateman would have been on, but I would imagine it wouldn't have been the odd copper here and there, would it? So therefore, look, the team hasn't had the best season, and they didn't have a good season last year. So playing for a lower club obviously can affect the way that you play. And it looks as though that they've just decided, right, we need to clear out. And it often happens in any, whether it be in Australia, New Zealand, or in the UK. Right, let's get rid of so-and-so. And we will bring in youngsters. We'll try to create something of that,
and
that
bring in
nature.
stars, and bring in stars where they need extra money. It helps people like poor old John Bateman are shifted out. He's only been there 12 months after joining from Wigan last year. He's under contract for next season. He's made 8 appearances apparently for West Tigers this year, but it's not worked out for him, obviously.
No, and as I say, you call it a fire sale. And look, rugby league is ruthless. I mean, Parramatta Eels coach Brad Arthur has been sacked. They lost to Melbourne Storm 48-16. They haven't had a good season, good start to the season in Australia. Now, this coach, he took the Eels to a grand final in 2022. They lost to my old club, Penrith. But it just indicates that if you're just not producing the goods, you're the first to go. The coach, axed, gone.
I know. I often wondered why you'd never be a coach, and now I know.
Listen, I was never good enough to ever want to become a coach. I was coach of Penrith in 1975, and I can assure you and all the listeners, it was the worst decision I have ever made in my rugby league career.
Oh, well, that's good. And your second worst was to come and work with me, I suppose. Go on, you can say that now if you want. I don't mind. My back is broad. Go on.
Why would I want to say that about you, top man? Listen,
Right.
the one thing that I always loved about working with you is that we enjoyed it.
Here to all of that. Let's just briefly look at the other fixtures coming up this weekend. Friday, Castleford against Hull. This is a vital game, particularly, I suppose, for the black and whites, because I bet you one man will be watching in Australia. John Cartwright will be watching the Mountie.
I think, look, I know John very, very well. His father was involved with Penrith whilst I was there. So I know the family, and I know the attitude that they have. John would have seen so many videotapes of Hull before he made any sort of decision to come over to the UK. Is that sort of player, an ex-player, and is that sort of coach that will ensure that he knew, after watching so many tapes, that this is what he can change. You've got to look at the bad side of things before you can start thinking about making the good side of things.
Well, let's wait and see when he gets here. Huddersfield against Lee is also coming up this weekend. Now, I mentioned Tom Amone is on his way out, but Adrian Lamb is staying at Lee. He has signed a contract extension till the end of 2027. He says he's got a 5-year plan and remains as committed to that as he was in Game 1 in the Championship. So that's good news for Lee at long last, because they've lost Asiata, they've lost Tom Amone, but they've still got their coach, and they've got Chris Chester, of course, working alongside him too. But Huddersfield will look to bounce back, won't they?
Yeah, well, they were disappointed. They really didn't sort of show up in the semi-final. They can do. They have the ability to do it, but their defence was just, shot to pieces within the opening 15, 20 minutes. And there was never any chance of them getting back into any sort of playing game which would trouble the opposition. And if you can't do that, you've got no chance. But sometimes you've got to bounce back. The players have got to have a good look at themselves, have a good look in the mirror and say, we were disappointed. And they owe it to the fans.
And they owe it to the coach, Ian Watson, who is hoping for a big improvement against Lee this weekend. Saints and Leeds, Stevo, always one of the marquee games of the season. This Saints second, Leeds outside the top 6 at the moment, so probably a little bit more significant for them. We've already mentioned Tommy Makinson's going. Brodie Croft and Harry Newman, they're returning from injury for the Leeds Rhinos. So there you go. You never know. You never know as far as this is concerned. Leeds need a win, don't they, to restore a bit of faith?
Yeah, and I think St Helens is also looking down the barrel and saying, well, we need to establish ourselves and make sure that we're in the top 4 at least. So they haven't been travelling continually week in, week out. They've been caught out a couple of times, and I think deep down that St Helens will start now to give the younger players that they've got in reserve grade, etc., give them the opportunity, because it's worked for some of the other top clubs to a great degree.
And Matty Russell has signed on loan for the Leeds Rhinos to plug some gaps caused by injuries on the wing to David Fusitua and Riley Lum. They both sidelined. Daryl Elfort's allowed to leave for Wakefield earlier on, so they're short of wingers, Leeds. And so we talk about young kids coming through. Matty Russell's one of the old boys, and he's now on loan from Warrington.
Yeah, and there again, a lot of people's eyebrows raised early in the season when Sam Burgess got rid of quite a few players. He wanted to clear out. He wanted to give the youngsters an opportunity and have around a couple, 3 or 4 players who had the experience.
For Saturday, we've got Catalan against Warrington. This is the 3rd meeting of the season. And Catalan have beaten them twice. They've beaten them home first week of the campaign, and they've beaten them away as well. So here we are. We're about, round 12, isn't it? And they've already played each other 3 times, Catalan and Warrington. I wonder how this one's going to go.
Well, having the home advantage is good. When you look over the years, Catalan's away sort of wins are not on a regular basis. I think Warrington are now cock-a-hoop. They're really, really firing well. As you say, they've lost to Catalans twice so far this year. And they want to make a marker. They want to show to the rugby league world that this is no fluke, that they're going to Wembley. And one way to do that, and add even more, I mean, the crowds will start going to Warrington. I hope they have a full house for the rest of the season. And they should have, because they're playing tremendous rugby league football. It was a pleasure to watch them, Eddie.
Well, it is. And, that is, without doubt, Catalan-Warrington is the tie of the round this weekend. Now, look, Sunday, Stevo, London Broncos against Hull Kingston Rovers. Hull given a rude awakening in the Cup semi-final. They also would be looking to bounce back. But 2 wins in a row for London. What do you think? Any chance?
Well, there's always an opportunity, Eddie. Maybe the hangover can continue on for another week. They will start favourites, because I'm sure that Willie Peters will say, right, come on, we've got to show to everybody at the Rovers camp, all the supporters, that we didn't play well in the semi-final. They know that. But if they come back with a big win over London, then maybe a bit of confidence will come to it. Look, they've missed out on the Challenge Cup. Simple as that. What they've got to look at now is ensure they get into a good position, so when it comes to the playoffs, they can build on that.
But can London put one across them, do you think, and get a second win in a row? They beat the Black and Whites last time. Here's the Red and Whites coming into town now. You'll be there anyway, won't you? You'll be cheering them on.
My word. And I hope that London put up a great show. It was a good win last week against the Black and Whites. And I just sort of think to myself that, if London can ensure that they can get the attack sorted out, the defence is okay for long periods of time in all the games this year. Okay, I know they've been beaten by large scores, but in the first half they've performed well. If they can just do that for the full 80, which they did against the Black and Whites, if they can do that against the Red and Whites, then they're in with a chance. Who knows?
We shall find out on Sunday. And the last game, Salford against Wigan, top against sixth. Hey, Salford punching above their weight again this year, aren't they? They're sixth in the table, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And not surprisingly, the Salford coach turned down the opportunity to leave the club. And I think he's done an amazing job. I think he's a great coach. And you say they're punching above their weight this year. And I think they've got a very, very good chance, you know. But Wigan, they were so impressive. It's just been a joy to watch Wigan and Warrington this year. It's going to be a tough game.
It is. It is going to be a tough game. Right, look, I'm fed up now talking to you. I'm off. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you again in 7 days' time.
It won't be the first time.
No, I'm sorry. I'm never fed up with talking to you. You know that. But I think we've covered just about everything from both sides of the world, and we hopefully have put the world to rights. And so I'll see you in 7 days' time, old boy.
Take care, top man.